Welcome back, students. In this video, we will talk about the heart. Heart is very important organ in our body. Without it, we can't survive. Everybody knows about that. So, what is the structure of heart? What is the function of heart? What are the causes of the diseases that can hurt this particular organ, like the heart attack, the blood pressure, the high blood pressure and the low blood pressure, and how the heart attack can be caused. What are the remedies for overcome this disease? How the eating habit should be done? How the exercises that are important for our heart. So in this video, we will talk about this, and afterwards we will also talk about the first aid. Students, if any person in front of you suffering from the chest pain or the heart attack, so what is your duty? What can you inform to the doctors? All these things we will discuss here. So let's start our journey. Structure of human heart. You will learn about the structure of human heart. The heart is located in the thoracic cavity, that is a chest cavity, in between the two lungs. The two-third part of the heart is located to the left of the midline of the body, and one-third is located to the right side of the body of the heart. The heart, that is a hollow muscular organ, somewhat. It's a conical form with an upper broad part, the base, and a lower narrow part, the apex. An apex in the adult, the heart is about 5 inches long, 3.5 inches wide, and 2.5 inches from front to back. In the inner side of the heart, internally, the heart is divided into 4 chambers, the upper 2 chambers and 2 lower chambers. The upper 2 chambers, they are called the atrium. Atrium, or we can say the auricles. And the lower 2 chambers, they are called the ventricles, right and left ventricles. So, the right atrium opens on the right ventricle via the tricuspid valve, because it has 3 flap-like structures and the valves which prevent the blood for the backflow side. Now, the left atrium opens to the left ventricle via the mitral valve or the bicuspid valve. So, the valve, the thick muscles wall running down of the middle of the heart, and that is called the septum. And the septum that divides the auricles or the ventricles. Blood. What is blood? Blood contains different type of blood cells that the pins of life force coursing through thousands of miles of arteries, veins, and capillaries. You are looking blue and red tubular-like structures. These are the arteries and veins. So, the blood vessels carry blood other organ, keeping them functioning and thriving. Are red blood cells carry oxygen and nutrients. On your screen, you are looking, this is the red blood cell that is also called the erythrocytes, and they are manufactured in bone marrow. So, why they are in red color? Because they contain the hemoglobin, which is responsible for the containing red color of the red blood cells. Students, the red blood cells, which are very important because the hemoglobin that is important for adhesiveness or affinity to the oxygen, and when the oxygen that attach to the hemoglobin, this type of blood that is called the pure blood. The platelets, the oxygen and nutrients are platelets, stop bleeding and help the clotting. So the platelets which are responsible for stop bleeding and clotting of the blood. Suppose if any person which is injured and the blood is flowing from the wound part, now these platelets stop the bleeding, they make a network, so that's why the blood cells they can't flow out. So the platelets are very important and they are also called the thrombocytes. The platelets stop bleeding and help to heal our wounds. Our white cells, this is the white blood cell, and the white blood cell which protects us against diseases. So they are also called the soldiers of our body. Students, why they are called the soldiers of our body? Because they create or they make our immunity power strong. So the antigens and the antibodies, they are made by the white blood cells, and because of this they are called the protectors or the soldiers of our body. So white blood cells protects us against infections, and the yellow liquid plasma in which they are suspended carries an array of proteins that regulate bleeding and clotting. Plasma is a fluid of the blood portion. This is, it contains 95% water and 5% other types of nutrients like the proteins, carbohydrates, fats. So students, plasma is responsible for the transportation of different nutrients to the different part of the body. So we are suggesting that we should drink a lots of water in a day. Why? Because for the transportation for the plasma, it is very necessary for the watery portion. So that's why our blood can contain the water and the transportation could be easy. Previously, we have understood about the structure of the heart and the circulation by the arteries and veins. Now, deeply we are understanding the impure blood, the blue blood will enter into the right atrium. By the tricuspid valve, it will enter into the right ventricle. Now, by the contraction of the wall of the heart, it will enter into the pulmonary artery which carry the impure blood to the lungs, right and the left lung. Here the blood will be oxidized and this pure blood will enter into the pulmonary vein into the left atrium. Here, by the bicuspid valve, it will enter into the left ventricle, and by this left ventricle, this pure blood will enter into the aorta, the main artery which transport the different body parts, the pure blood. Now that you are looking at here the electrical shocks. So the right atrium, which is also called the natural pacemaker, here the SA node. So these are the pulses which create a beating, and according to these impulses the blood will be enter from the atrial side to the ventricle side. So these are the atrial systole, and by the ventricle systole means from the ventricle side the blood will be entered into the aorta and the veins. The sequence of events which occur from the beginning of one heartbeat to the beginning of the second one is called the cardiac cycle, and this is also called the heartbeat. So students, one sound you are hearing, that if you are putting your hand on your heart, that lub dub lub dub. So these are the basic sounds of the systolic and the diastolic pressure. So what are the systolic and the diastolic pressure? Let's understand. Heart and the blood vessels together constitute the heart vascular system. Students, blood circulate within this network in two separate loops. First, the systematic bloodstream and the pulmonary bloodstream. The pulmonary bloodstream is fed by the heart's right ventricle, which sends the blood to the lungs. The blood is loaded with oxygen, which turns it bright color, and then sent back to heart via the pulmonary vein. The blood is then expelled by the left ventricle and enters the systematic capillaries, and the circuit irrigates the entire body and supplies different tissues with oxygen. Now, when the blood returns to heart less than a minute later, it is loaded with the carbon dioxide, and that is the darker